That true, listen up. I know firsthand how limited a vessel medical insurance can be. This is why you need reliable medical coverage. Moore Dixon offers comprehensive global insurance tailored for yachties, covering everything from emergencies to routine checkups with flexible options and a single point of contact. Moore Dixon has been voted best health and medical insurance by captains and crew, including myself. Don't wait until the unexpected happens. Get covered today. Visit mdbl.im or email them at inquiries@mdbl.im for a free quote.
Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about money, the thing we all chase, spend too quickly, and rarely learn to manage. I am joined by Charl Minnaar, better known as the Yachting Investor, who change the way you think about money and hopefully make it work for you instead of you always having to work for it. Charl is a former yachty who turned his curiosity about money into a mission, helping crew take control of their finances, shift their mindset, and actually build wealth while at sea. So let's get into it. Welcome, Charl, to the show.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm excited. We have been trying to do this show for a while, so finally I got you on the other side of the mic. So before we get into money, can you share a little bit about your journey from yachty to financial educator?
Sure thing. So I grew up in South Africa. I went to university, and after I finished my master's degree, I did my degrees in logistics and supply chain management, so never really in finance, but I was always kind of hovering close to the BCom accounting and financial management modules at university. Like many young South Africans, I couldn't really find a job, and it's not a very prosperous place. So I took the leap and started my career on yachts in 2019. I had an amazing yachting career up until about 3 weeks ago, where I finally decided to hang up the chamois. And I had 8 years, of which I spent 90% of that time on two boats. So I was very lucky with long-term programs and with families and captains and all that type of stuff in a very growing type of environment. And about 2 years into my yachting journey, when I started to make better money, I was like, okay, it's probably time to stop going to the beach clubs and to stop buying new iPhone every year and learn how to educate myself on investing and see how I can get my money working for me. And during that time, I was working on a boat in the Med for a really nice British family. And the owner actually gave me a book once he found out that I was interested in the topic. And he gave me a book called Money Master the Game. It's a book written by Tony Robbins. And in retrospect, it's actually kind of a shit book, but it was a good intro to finance and investing. And then the bug just bit me. And I always tell people I was very lucky to get exposed to it early on because it put me on a trajectory during an early stage of my career to kind of set up certain systems and build certain habits and flex certain money muscles so that when I progressed in my career and started earning more, it was very easy to just rearrange the amounts or the percentages I was saving. So that's how I got here. And then after about 3 or 4 years of just dealing and fighting this battle on my own, I started to get really frustrated seeing my friends around me blow all their money on blow and, parties and the new designer handbags and just stupid shit all the time. So I started writing a few articles trying to explain certain financial concepts, and they started going viral. And I decided, okay, let's do a newsletter. And fast forward just over a year, we've got hundreds of students in the academy and big coaching programs. So very blessed to be able to do this now on a more full-time basis.
I just kind of wonder, what was your mindset growing up? Like, how did you view money? What did you sell in your house? Because I feel like the mindset and what we see in childhood in regards of money and finances have so much to do with the choices we make and how we end up getting the bug or not about investing and making better choices. You know what I mean? So I just wonder, how was your mindset?
That's a very good question. Firstly, one of my favorite quotes in investing is the best time to start investing was yesterday. The second best time is today. So, to everyone listening that feels like I'm late, I missed the train, I have some of my coaching students are captains that have been in the industry for 30 years. 30 years, they still haven't bought a house. They don't have more than $15,000 for an emergency. It kind of blows my mind, but I understand why, because education system has failed us. And this is applicable to South Africans, it's applicable to Americans, to the Brits, to the Aussies. Everyone you'll meet in yachting will tell you the same thing. They teach us the wrong shit in school. Why do they teach me how to calculate the circumference of a circle, but they don't show me how to do my taxes? Or why do I have to learn about the million unnecessary things they teach you when you're a high school student and your brain is a sponge? You can actually be teaching kids more important stuff. And in terms of my upbringing, I South Africa is a very poor country. Okay, I think everybody knows that by now. However, us that grow up middle class, we call it middle class. If you zoom out and look at the rest of the country, you are actually in like the top 5%. If you just have a roof over your head and you have running water and you have a house that can't be broken into all the time, you are pretty like top 5% wealth. So, but when you grow up, you look at the people around you in your neighborhood and you think, okay, they have more money, they have more money. We never really grew up poor, we never grew up rich. But unfortunately, we never spoke about money. My parents got divorced when we were pretty young, and there was just massive fights always about money. And like many children go through in divorces, it sucks. And at the end of the day, either it's a result of the inability to talk about money, or that comes post divorce. Like, no, it's my house, or no, I need the house for the kids. So that whole experience, I think, gave me a little bit of a mental block. And I was always pretty good at making money. I was very entrepreneurial since I was young. I always had like a hot dog stand, or I was selling fake IDs, like things you got to do to hustle when you're
Yeah,
in
I
high
was
school.
making fake ideas, but I didn't sell them.
and but I never really kept anything up until yachting once again, when I actually for the first time had the opportunity to earn way more than my expenses require. And as a yachty, if you live on board, you have none of that. And some of our countries like South Africa, we don't even pay tax. So you literally have 100% disposable income. And I think it was I remember I was still a junior decky. I was only making €2,500 a month. But I remember doing a full season of like back to back bus trips and charters. And at the end of the season, I think I had like 40,000 euros. And I was like, that's more money than my parents ever had. And I'm a 23-year-old guy that washes boats. And I think that sitting and looking at that amount and thinking, holy shit, what can we do to get this deployed to work for me while I'm out here scrubbing the teak? And I think that was my massive aha moment that I had in 2020.
So there's all these mindsets that I think a lot of people don't talk about when it comes down to finances education, because it's not just reading the book, right? It's like, how are you internally aligning with money? Money is an energy, right? Either you're magnetizing it or you're pushing it away. Get real about where you're at with your money mindset. And then obviously get the resources and tools to start moving into a more abundant, place. I wonder, why do you think so many crews struggle with the golden handcuffs, even though, as you mentioned, our job and lifestyle is almost set up to allow us to save and have little to no living expenses? Of course, there are the exception to the rules where you have a family and you already have a house and you have a mortgage and you have kids, you have school payments, all that. But for the majority of us, especially the young ones, I mean, there's no living expenses. It's literally, sometimes you even get your phone paid for, you know?
So money psychology amongst yachties is especially a very fascinating case study. And I really like this business I started because I'm going to turn this into a life mission and one day write a very calculated thesis about why yachties are so fucking dumb in terms of finances. With all due respect, I can count on my hands how many yachties actually live a frugal and calculated lifestyle. So I like that you mentioned all the scarcity and abundance stuff because that's super important. The upbringing, the way you grow up, and the way your brain is wired will have an outsized impact on how you treat things like money. I can use, and my brother listens to this podcast every week, and he's going to laugh when I say this. We are two peas in a pod. We look the same. We sound the same. We're only 17 months apart, Irish twins. And we grew up the exact same manner. We shared a room. We went to the same university, to the same frat house. So up until the ages of 21, 22, we lived the exact same lives. I'm abundant. He's scarce. It's the way we're wired. We're animals. And I have always been in the camp of like, you know what? It's just money. Like, yes, I'm responsible with it, but I never think twice about donating money to a good cause or helping out a friend. Where my brother, not so much. He's got a scarcity mindset and he's always scared that he's going to run out. So that's a very important part of money psychology. And I think to answer your question about the golden handcuffs, the only reason the golden handcuffs exist is because people never think about the day when the income stops coming in. If you don't have an exit plan, it will be handcuffs. If you have an exit plan, it's called the launch pad. And that is how I approach yachting from day one. I was like, I want to make sure that I set myself up with enough assets, enough income generating assets, as well as a business, so that when it's time to hang up the chamois and get out of yachting, then I don't start from ground zero. And on paper, this is all easy. I'm experiencing firsthand. I'm sitting here 3 weeks after resigning. This will be my first time in 7 or 8 years where I won't be getting a paycheck. And it's scary because I'm used to looking at my net worth, which I track religiously. I'm used to see it doing that. And I've accepted for the coming years, however long it may take, I might plateau or even go a little bit down. But that's okay because I sacrificed enough impulsive crew aperitivos. I never upgraded the phone unless I needed to. I only own clothes that I wear frequently. And because of that, I have a bit more of a buffer to figure out what I do. And unfortunately, a lot of yachties don't do that. And before they know it, they wake up, they are approaching 50 years old. They hate their job. Their body's falling apart from carrying boxes and life rafts and scrubbing teak on their hands and knees. And then it becomes the actual golden handcuffs because you have no exit plans. So, yes, enjoy your journey whilst yachting, but always keep one foot outside of the door because you don't know how quickly it happens, how quickly that day comes where you're like, holy fuck, I hate this job right now. And you want options at that point. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable.
Let's dive a little bit in about investing. So, what's the beginner options and what should we be avoiding at all costs?
What I do at the Yachting Investor is I help people build a framework and I built this based purely off of my personal finances. So to everyone listening, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a licensed CFP or anything like that. And quite frankly, I don't want to be one of them because what I'm trying to show everyone is that you don't need to have a finance degree to manage your finances. So I am intentionally not educating myself in that regard in a formal capacity because my life's mission is to prove to everyone that you and I sitting at home can do exactly what someone on Wall Street is doing. Before you start investing, there's a few things you need to sort out in your financial well-being if you look at your holistic picture. So I call this my Yachty financial playbook, and these are 7 steps that you follow towards financial health. I'll run through them real quick. Number 1, set clear goals. Make sure, am I trying to save for a house? Am I building a stock portfolio? Or am I just kind of generating cash until I find my next move? Number 2, build an emergency fund. This is super important. Before you start investing, you need to have an emergency fund. An emergency fund is your land-based living expenses. So listen to that, yachties. Land-based. If you are without a job and you have to live in the real world, you got to calculate how much that costs you per month. And then anything between 3 to 6 months worth of land-based living expenses is what you should keep in cash before you start investing. That is what I see as my life raft before I go out to sea. I can't do anything before I know my life jackets and my life raft is in place. Step number 3, you got to eliminate all bad debt. So before you start investing, eliminate bad debt. Notice that I'm saying bad and not just eliminate all debt, because some debt is good debt. Like having a mortgage can be seen as good debt because it's connected to an asset. But if you just have a credit card debt or a student loan or a Lululemon account that has high interest working against you, that's not good. We don't want that. We want to get rid of your debt before you start investing. Then number 4 in our financial SOPs is you got to max out your tax-free investment vehicles. So this is a very long way. I need a better word for that. But it's basically each country has some form of a tax beneficial investment scheme. Americans have something called a 401k or a Roth IRA. The Brits have something that they call an ISA. South Africans have something they call a TFSA. Australians have something they call a superannuation. And each one of these countries allows you to take money, your own money. You can invest it into this investment vehicle tax-free. You can have it grow over a prolonged period of time, many decades, and then you can withdraw it tax-free. And the reason why I have people do that first is because why would you not max out something that you're not going to pay tax on first? It's a no-brainer. For some countries, it's a very small amount. South Africans can only do about $2,000 a year without getting taxed. But if you're from the UK, you can do £20,000 a year without getting taxed. That's very important, step number 4. Step number 5 is what I call my hyper accumulation phase. And this is where I'm going to answer your question on investing. So this is the superpower yachties have with having low expenses and high income. And to start your investing journey, everybody overcomplicates it. You don't need a financial advisor. You don't need a broker. Everything exists on your iPhone or on your Android, whatever phone you use now. So what I normally recommend to people, download. I'll use the main yachty cohorts as an example. If you are an American yachty listening to this, download the Robinhood app. If you are a British yachty listening to it, download the Vanguard app. If you're an Aussie, download the Acorns app. If you're a South African, download Easy Equities. If you're from Europe, you can use Revolut. All of these platforms is a low-cost brokerage platform where you can buy and invest the stock, but you can trade on the stock market. What that means, you can buy pieces of businesses and own fractional ownership in these businesses, banking on good companies to make you money in the long term. And there's a product or an investment vehicle out there, which is called index funds or ETFs. And a lot of people get confused. The best analogy I have to explain to people what that is, if you imagine an apartment block with 500 apartments inside, instead of buying one apartment in this building and running the risk of the thing catching fire or there's a flood or someone breaking in, any assets, but you only have to buy one instrument to make all of this happen. My personal favorite as a personal retail investor is something called the S&P 500. The S&P 500 tracks the top 500 companies in the USA and by definition, the world, as it's the largest market in the world. And what I really love about it is you click one button, you buy S&P 500 ETF with one button, and then you just bought a tiny piece of Apple, of Amazon, of Meta, of Microsoft. And what happens while we sleep, and this is why it's brilliant for a passive investor, is while we're sleeping, all the losers of these 500 companies, so the bottom 4 to 500, every night they get replaced by the ones from 5 to 600 that are performing better. So that completely eliminates the need for you to be glued to your screen and to be doing tons of trades all the time. More than 70% of the money I own is in this basic investment vehicle. And on average, over the past 100 years, it returns about 8 to 10% per year, adjusted for inflation. And now just a small little asterisk. Everyone, just because it has returned that doesn't mean it's going to happen in the future. Past performance is not indicative of future returns, but you can reliably assume that over the long term, anything longer than 10 years, if you just carry on investing diligently and staying patient and not panicking when there's a dip, your money will grow at 8 to 10% per year. And in the first 10 years, it's not going to seem like much. But after that, compound interest starts to do its thing. And before you know it, you are sitting on a multi-$100,000 portfolio by only investing a few hundred or a few $1,000s per month.
So this sounds amazing, but yachting careers can be very unpredictable, right? Like you were very lucky that you had 2 jobs for 6 years, steady income, good employers, good crew. So you were able to, have stability within the yachting career, which is more often than not the reality for many yacht crew out. Contracts end, boats sell, captain changes, bad employers or crew that don't fit you. So what's your advice for building financial stability in such an unstable environment for so many?
Great question. And I actually know how to answer that pretty well because most of my coaching students frequently go through these situations. This is the exact reason I built this framework, because it means we have a template we can copy across every single boat or circumstance you're in. As long as you have taken care of step number 2, which is having an emergency fund, you altering your career and having uncertainty shouldn't affect your financial strategy. And I'm going to explain to you why. Let's say 20-year-old Sally is now a second stew on a boat. She's used to earning $4,000 a month. Now, we've already got her to the emergency fund amount which she needs. Let's call it a nice round number, $10,000. She still has that. Now, she's quitting her job. Now she's in Fort Lauderdale, living in a crew house, kind of determining her next job. As long as she never goes below her emergency fund threshold, it means she still has enough money to invest. And that is why I tell people, let's look at your risk appetite and at your profile, because a 20-year-old girl who doesn't have kids or isn't married has a very different outlook than the 40-year-old chief stew who has 3 children and maybe a sick husband. Okay? So each one of these people, we got to look at a case-by-case basis. Let's stay with Sally, our 20-year-old's example. This phase where she is at her life, she has a lot of time to invest and a lot of time for her investments to compound in perpetuity. So if we decide, okay, Sally, our number one goal is to get you to $50,000 invested in the S&P 500 so that there's a meaningful amount that can start to compound. even if you're just day working without a job and you're only pulling in $1,000 a month, if you already have your emergency fund taking care of your living expenses, then that means you still have $1,000 left to invest. And now I'm using a round number once again. Let's take that $1,000. I always tell crew, you want to look at your spending in 3 buckets. Bucket number 1 is for future you. Bucket number 2 is for current you and progressing in life. And bucket number 3 is for instant gratification because yes, YOLO, and yes, sometimes you got to treat yourself. So if you have $1,000, let's say 300 of that dollars needs to go to future you so that we're going to invest into your index fund. Another $300 we're going to put aside for your next food and safety course or your next florist course that you're going to do. And bucket number 3, that's the bucket that you use to go for dinners or to buy the new leggings you've been looking at Aloe for a while, whatever it may be. The 3 bucket strategy really works for my students because instant gratification, you still get a taste of it. You take care of future self and you take care of your immediate needs. So that's normally the advice I try to show people when they are volatile in between jobs. Just because you're not earning a steady income doesn't mean you have to stop your investing journey. Let's use myself quickly as a case study. I just exited yachting. I know I'm not going to earn money for the next calendar year. I've saved very hard in 2025. I was very strict with myself, even though I got married and I'm busy with immigration things and it's costing a lot of money. I decided 2025, no fun allowed. I need to keep all the cash for 2026. Now, even though I have no income, each month I know all my bills are being paid for because that's all sitting in my emergency fund. I can still invest. I've kept aside enough money to still invest a few $100s each month into the stock market because I am the yachting investor. And I also put enough aside in a fun bucket so I can still do my adventures. I can still do the ultra marathons. I can go camping with my wife. And that's just a good holistic way to plan for unexpected contingencies.
Okay. And what about the people that are freelancers? Like, how would they, what's your advice for people that are temporary workers, always looking for the next job, not getting maybe the same amount of money every time they go into a job? Is that obviously it's going to be a different challenge?
Yeah.
But is it impossible to start getting financial freedom in the sense of checking in your debt, doing the savings, and then starting obviously your investing journey?
So for freelancers and for temp workers, my first piece of advice is really think about your current situation and be like, is this really how I want to be living forever? Because to some people, it's cool. Some people like it. They're like, yeah, I just want to come in and out and do a few charters. And if that's the case, you will likely have to accept that you will be freelancing for a very long time. Okay? Not trying to be mean, but if you're not gathering any benefits from a job, as in medical and, accumulating paid holiday times, etc., you might feel like you're free in the short term because you're freelancing, but in the long term, you're actually shackling yourself to a career longer than you think. Now, if that is your living situation and the only thing you can do is freelance because you have kids to take care of and they can only go to grandma every now and then, and that every now and then is when you go do temp gigs, then it's a different story. But then you got to be very strict with yourself and you got to realize, okay, what is my monthly expenses? And then let's say you cost $2,000 a month to keep your life operating. Then when you go do freelance gigs, you need to make sure that you sock away pretty much 90% of that amount to take care of future months where you're not freelancing. The problem is with freelancing, in my opinion, it's easy in, easy out. You very frequently when you're a freelancer, you can charge a bit of a higher day rate. You then hopefully get a split of the charter tips as well. And then suddenly you have like 10 grand from the past month and you're like, ooh, I'm rich. In June, you're rich, yes. But what about July, August, and September, where there's no gigs for you coming up in the summer? So it's very important to set a baseline of being like, this is how much I need for the next coming months. And then whatever is extra, don't necessarily say, okay, this is what's left. Let's consume it. Maybe be like, let me put away for one more extra month, because then if I really don't feel like it come October to work, I still don't have to.
Okay, so thanks for that information. I want to talk about freelancing from real experience, because I did 8 years of freelancing and 8 years of full time. And I chose to freelance because of my mental health, because I really realized that I wanted to be in yachting, but in order to be part of the yachting industry, I couldn't be a full time crew member. So I'm sure that there's a lot of other people making that choice like I did. And what I do want to say is that I did have that challenge that you're talking about, where I'm making lots of money in a short period of time, because obviously I'm charging more, but then I'm like, need a break, right? Because that's the whole point of freelancing, because you can't be on that scenario for long. Then you need extra time to kind of like reset before you go back in. And unless you're leaving, unless you're choosing wisely on where you're leaving, so maybe you go to Mexico, while you're in between jobs, and then you can leave with like $500, right? And you just make 6,000. You have to be very mindful of how you're utilizing your money outside, every time you get out of the job. And I didn't. I mean, I was in a way, but I wasn't doing it consciously. So in a way, that's why I ended up doing probably longer, like what you mentioned, right? Like you kind of like, you almost set up yourself for failure in a way. And it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that you have to be conscious of the choices you're making and how financially that's going to structure you. Because I didn't have people telling me about this. So I was just living the life, like trying to figure out what to do next, working while I can and when I wanted to, and then living life in between. And that was great until it wasn't. And it was like, okay, I really need to get out of this industry. And how am I going to make that happen? I'm not set up financially to do it, even though I have made thousands and thousands of dollars. So I did want to say, though, it is still possible to get out of yachting and do a different career without having investment, without having all this beautiful structure. I did it. It's fucking challenging as fuck. So if you can avoid what I have done, I highly recommend it. And it can be done. I'm the living example of it. But I feel like I needed to go through that because of the scarcity mindset that I had ingrained so badly, that it was almost like I needed to be put in a position where I also had to like work on my trust with, of self-trust and trust in, the unknown and all these things. Like it was a very specific journey to me, but I think that a lot of people might not have to go through that journey. And I think that this is why I like to talk about these topics. And even though, this is not my educational thing, I do, talk about it because I feel that I didn't get the education that was required, the inspiration. I didn't have yachties around me investing. I didn't. I had people blowing their money, So that was kind of like what they were doing. So I was doing it. And then I was like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. But I also didn't know what I should be doing. Right? So can it be possible? Yeah, of course it can be possible. It's going to be challenging. Yes. Can you make better choices? Of course. So educate yourself, get a plan, sort yourself out. And then, like you said, if you're going to freelance, then you have to be very strategic about it. And you have to have your numbers. I feel like a lot of people don't even like to look at their bank account. They don't like to see their numbers, right? And I was one of them. And I realized when you actually see your numbers, you realize more than likely that it's not as bad as you thought.
Yeah.
and you get clarity and you're able to just move forward a lot more easier.
What you just said at the end there is so important, because what doesn't get measured can't get managed. And the first thing I do with anybody that steps into the Yachting Investors universe is I built a free net worth calculator and budgeting tool, which is on Excel. I send that to them and I'm like, go spend 30 minutes, go download your bank statements, get ChatGPT to help you if you're not even in the mood for that. Let it run through your last 3 months of transactions and actually see what you're spending money on. 9 out of 10 people have no idea that they spend thousands of dollars on something, and it's normally something that they don't even give a fuck about. So then that's immediately your first area where you can start cutting stuff. I had a girl, won't name any names, she definitely listens to this podcast. She's one of my favorite students. When she started with me and did this exercise, she had over $1,500 worth of subscriptions. She was paying for 3 Netflixes. She was paying for 2 Hulus, like purely because she never took 30 minutes to look at what she's spending on. That's the number one thing you have to do. You got to set that. And for freelancers, even more important, you got to use my budget if you want to. I'll send you the link to put in the show notes. Download it, insert your personal data. And what my spreadsheet does, it shows you on the next sheet exactly where your money's going and exactly what you can do to counter all of this negative spending. So that would be a good start for many listeners, I think.
Thank you. And to wrap it up, what is your 3 pieces of advice for whether you are a freelancer, a junior crew starting in the industry, or a senior crew member?
Okay, 3 pieces of advice. Straight off the bat. Number 1, learn how powerful compound interest is. Okay? There's something called a compound interest calculator. Go play with it on the internet. Insert $1,000 invested over 5, 10, 15, 20 years at an 8% interest rate. Your mind will be blown. If you do this at a young age, you will become a millionaire, no doubt. That's number 1 advice. Number 2, know where your money is going and spend extravagantly on the stuff you care about, but cut mercilessly on the things you don't care about. So if you go fill in your budget and you see, okay, I'm spending $1,000 a month at restaurants, take a moment and think, do I actually enjoy food that much? And if the answer is yes, by all means. But then you got to find another department for you to start saving money on. And then number 3, most important, you are never too late to start investing. For those that feel like they're behind, I'm talking to you as well. Like, you're not behind. Like, you are not too late to start your journey on investing. And you also don't need a lot of money to start investing. You need as little as $10. But just get started today.
Thank you so much. And how can people work with you?
So you can find me on Instagram at The Yachting Investor, or you can look at my website, www.theyachtinginvestor.com. I have a coaching program. I have built 3 flagship courses to help you on your journey to learn how to start investing. And then on the website and Instagram, you can also find tons of free resources like this calculator, my top 10 books recommendations, my top 10 podcast recommendations. There's lots of stuff out there, and don't be shy. I reply to everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Charl, for bringing all your wisdom and experience and for showing us that we don't need to spend on experts. We can actually start today, and you're a living example of that, and that we don't need a lot. We just need to start. Because that's
Awesome.
The biggest thing, right? Like, we always think like we need, and then we don't do it, when in fact, we just need to start. So thank you again. And if you're listening and want to learn more, you can find Charl through the Yachting Investor podcast right here on Yachting International Radio, where he breaks down, like, saving, investing, and money mindset in a way that makes fucking sense for yacht crew. You'll also find his Substack, newsletter, and more resources in the show below this video. So go check him out and start building your financial freedom today. Thank you, Charl.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.